In the bunker, we're going to build a Wasteland Fort, or we're going to start that project anyway. First part of what we're going to do is the gate. And here's some sketches I've done, as I'm wont to do with all of my projects, or most of them. Various ideas I've got about how we're going to proceed. I'm going to base these pieces, and I'm going to base them in such a way I can cut out one base and then divide it into two and all that. But we'll get to that as we go along. Our gate is going to be this fantastic Ertl school bus that I found at Tractor Supply years ago. So let's get to it. Alright, so I got the basic layout. The towers and a portion of the wall will be based like that. And I used a white pencil. If you don't have one, a regular pencil works fine. It's just easier for me to see because I'm old. But anyway, let's get that cut out. I'm going to treat that on both sides with sanding sealer so that this will not warp, and will be pretty much impervious to moisture over the course of forever. So let me get that done and we'll get started. Alright, so to do the towers and the walls, I've started to lay these out on the foam core. So I'm going to continue to cut these pieces out, and then we'll start fitting them and we'll put some glue on them. Okay, so I cut out the parts for one tower, and instead of just doing a square kind of or rectangular up and down, I tapered them a bit, which would give the defenders a little bit better field of fire if anybody got close to the wall, to the base. So we will go ahead and fire up the old glue gun and start getting this put together. Okay, we're going to use hot glue because this will all be glued on the inside. You won't even be able to see it. We're going to put covering on the outside. So make sure that everything is square before you glue it, or try to keep it square while you glue it, and being careful not to burn your fingers. Alright, and give that a moment to set up and kind of adjust it while it does. Alright, so we will do that all the way around and we'll be back. Okay, so we've got all that together. I also added a floor. I had to measure that out and figure out the height or depth that that's going to be. We'll also put a little access portal on the back side because that'll be inside the fort. So just measure, using whatever guys you're using so that they have enough clearance to sort of shoot over or whatever. And alright, so we'll get this stuck to the base, which this ended up being a little larger than I thought, so it's not going to fit the base quite as well as I'd hoped. But in any case, we're going to glue it on there and go with it. Alright, so a bit of hot glue later, and that's stuck down, and whatever glue seeps out, not a big deal. We'll cover that up with a little bit of terrain work, and it'll be fine. Alright, so let's get to work on the other one. So there's our basic carcasses for the towers. I've also glued on a portion of each wall that'll come off of there and put our floors in. I've got to find the flooring so we can add that. And basically, we're just about ready to begin putting on all of our siding. So let's get started. Alright, so I did that really cool thing where I lost a bunch of footage because there was a big gap between the last time I filmed and this time. Also, my Ender 3 Pro printer died, so that was great. Anyway, so I've got one side done. I'm going to very quickly go over how I did it for using the other side. Just basically you've got your foam core bit. And in this case, I'm using the paper, corrugated paper, that I got from Amazon. And you can get it at craft stores and whatnot also. And you just take and, if I can find my pencil, just measure out, just kind of do that number. And do it so you can see it. But anyway, and then just cut it out and glue it on there with some PVA and just cover that whole thing. So we'll be back. All right, so we got that piece cut out. And we're just going to take and lay a little bead of PVA on there. I find that to be probably the most forgiving medium to use. Well, unless you do that, that's fantastic. Alright, let's freshen that up. We never let those things get us down. As always, like I said before, my channel is more of a cautionary tale than anything else. So, anyway, just put that on there. Get that all lined up. Put it on the correct face. There, I'm trying to put it on the back, and that's not the piece for the back. Fantastic work there. And kind of wiggle that a little bit just to get everything kind of smeared around. And then just do that on all of the other faces. And we'll be back. So if you get done with that and you end up with gaps, that's fine. We'll cover those over in the next step. So I'm going to cover up this wall and then we'll go on to the next one. Alright, so for the flooring in the towers, I'm going to put some of this plastic canvas or granny grating. This is the 10 per inch. And I just cut out a piece that would fit down in there. And we're just going to lay down a little bit of PVA inside here to kind of hold it. There we go. And once that sets up a little, then I will put some of the Mod Podge and paint mixture on there to kind of seal it. That'll help the paint stick to it and make it a lot more durable, and also just ensure that it's going to stay in place. So let's glue in the other one, and then we're going to add some trim along here with our friend the coffee stirrers, and we'll be right back. Alright, so those are in there. We'll let those set up. In the meantime, we will take a selection of coffee stirrers and begin adding some trim along all these pieces. That'll give it kind of a little bit neater appearance, but not too neat. It'll still look pretty scrappy, which is kind of how we want it. And we're just going to measure them, cut them to measure. And we'll put some little PVA down there, maybe a little more PVA. Just push that down on there, and we'll just do that on all of the exposed sections. So we'll be back. So all that trim's on, and for the base, we're going to just spread some PVA and take some sand. In this case, it's some sand that I got at a construction site years ago, but you can use playground sand or beach sand or whatever kind of sand you want, whatever you happen to have on hand. And we're just going to do that all the way around. And then I'm also going to paint the Mod Podge in there. That's set up, so we'll be right back. Alright, so while all that's drying, we're going to add some little kind of scrap pieces to the faces of this to try to break up the regularity and give it more of a scrappy appearance. So we're going to cut some of those out, peel the backing off, and lay them on there with some PVA. So we'll put those on and be right back. So we've taken all of the offcuts, including some I had from another part of the project, and glued those on sort of randomly, although I need to put some here. I didn't worry too much about the back because your battle damage is primarily going to be on the front face of these, so that'll save you a little bit of time. So I'm going to put a couple on here, and then we'll get ready to prime this. That looks a little better. One other thing I wanted to point out was on the entrance doors, I had cut them a little narrow So I did not put the coffee stirrers on there. I just put some PVA on there to seal the foam. But it'll look fine once we've painted it. So if I can quit hitting the camera, we'll get ready and prime this. Alright, so those pieces are primed, and that really helped tie everything together. And I did them in a red oxide finish because we want a kind of rusty underlay on that. And then we're also going to take a look at how we did the bus. And how this is set up to work is these two towers are there. And then this bus basically will be the gate. So it drives in and out of the way. And I put an armored section on there and all that. But we'll cut back to working on that. So this bus just unscrews. So it comes apart really, really easily. There's a little fold-out stop sign on the side, and I removed the screw for that and took that apart as well and saved that sign for another project. Alright, so I took the stickers off of here, and the front one took a little bit of doing. I ended up scraping that glue off with the edge of a knife. I didn't have a hairdryer to remove it. The ones on the back, I guess because I've had this so long, they kind of loosened up anyway, so I was able to just take my knife and kind of edge it under there and just kind of pull that off. So I'm going to add those lights back with some 1/16 pieces of punched cardboard, and then we'll get ready to paint that. Alright, so we're adding the lights back on, and I just took some pieces of thick paperboard that I punched with a 1/16 inch hole punch, and you just put a little dab of super glue down there. Here, let's see if we can capture that magic. Just put a little dab of super glue down where you want it. And then pick up, something's going on outside, pick up one of the hole punch pieces on your point of your knife, and then just lay it down in that little drop of glue, and then just put those wherever you want. That's also how I make a lot of rivets on things. It's real easy to do. You can do it with PVA glue as well, but the super glue grabs it right away, so a little more sure as far as putting it down, but the PVA is more forgiving for positioning. Okay, so to armor up the side of the bus, I'm going to build a panel, and I'm going to glue it on with contact or construction cement. And you spread that stuff on there on each side that you're going to put together and let them dry for about 15 minutes. And then very, very carefully position them, because once you put this stuff together, it is bonded permanently. It will not come off. So, I mean, not non-destructively. So we're going to try and get this. And what I did was I made some little witness marks and figured out where this needs to actually line up. So we're going to do our best to make that happen. Okay, and then once you put that on there and that stuff bonds, once that sets up, it won't come off of there. So, all right, that looks pretty good. So what we're going to do is add some corrugated bits to that and some more detailing to this. So let's go on to that. Alright, so our painting is going to be pretty much the standard formula that I use for buildings like these. I'm going to start with that red oxide base. I'm going to put on we're going to kind of overbrush a layer of pewter gray. Then we will do a little bit of silver highlight. And then we'll go back and touch up and put on some rusty spots, some really active rust as we need it. We may apply a wash. But anyway, that's my earlier videos go into that pretty in depth. So I'm going to get started here, but I'm not going to focus too heavily on it because I don't want this video to be super long. And then the ground cover, I'm going to take our nutmeg color. We'll just dry brush that on there, and then dry brush some maple sugar tan. The wood, we're going to do the same gray that we do this, but then it's going to get a black wash and a lighter gray dry brush, and then finally a maple sugar tan, and that'll make that wood really pop. So, because that's what you need, is popping wood. But anyway, the other thing we'll do is add some different color on some of these applique pieces to really give it a scrappy look. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and we will be back. Okay, and here we are in the overbrushing stage. I wanted to point out, brushes I'm using for this today were generously provided by my second favorite nephew. So, thanks, buddy. Another thing I should note, I went ahead and put that same gray color in there on that grating, the flooring for the towers, and then I'm just going to dry brush that a little bit with some silver. And I did the silver as a second dry brushing step because inevitably you're going to get it on the ground cover and or the wood. So at this step it doesn't really matter because you can go back and cover it up. I mean, try to be neat, but if you happen to hit that, not a huge deal. You can clean it up in the next step. One of the other things you'll maybe want to do as you go along is, after these applique panels, they kind of blend in. So I just take a black or a brown wash and kind of go around the edges of them just to accentuate the shadow. And that kind of makes them stand out a little bit. Once we add some color, it'll help a lot too. But in case you want to leave them the same color, you can without them just completely disappearing. Here's another handy thing. When you dry brush that final highlight on the ground, I went up about a brush width onto the walls just to kind of give it that dusty effect, and it makes it sort of blend in a little better. Alright, and there's our gates, or towers, pretty much done. You can see it's got a pretty scrappy appearance. I just sponged on, although you could stipple, it's probably easier, the other colors on the patches, and just randomly pick some colors. It doesn't really matter, just whatever looks good to you. And I put a black wash around them to accentuate the shadows, and overall it's got kind of a rusty, scrappy look. So I started to do kind of the same thing here on the bus. I figured that the metal on this gate got replaced more often, so this would be a newer piece. So it's a little rusty, but it's a bit shinier. It's patched, but it's not quite so torn up. I think I'm going to put some wash to accentuate the shadows on there, and then I'm going to sponge paint some yellow onto this bus to give it a rusty appearance. So we'll be right back. Alright, so after a bit of sponge painting, there's our brush. I used some Vallejo golden yellow, and I'm going to go back and pick out the details, and I'm also going to paint the tires, the rubber of the tires, with some Vallejo black gray, and kind of make that stand out a little more. And then we'll pick out the lights that we put on earlier, and probably darken up around where the lights are too. So we'll be back. Alright, so there's our bus. We very carefully sponge painted on some yellow. I put on some black pin washing. I used that dark gray color to do around the windows, on the doors, on those side pieces. More pin wash around there. And then I painted very carefully all of the little marker lights that we had added with the hole punches. The tires got a black wash, and when that was dry, then I just dry brushed them with the maple sugar tan. So I'm going to call that good enough for now. That's certainly good enough for a gate. Remember, guys, if you like this kind of content, like and subscribe, hit that bell, all those things they tell us to tell you to do. Hopefully you did enjoy it enough. If you watched it this far, I'm guessing you did. So thanks, and have a fantastic day.